the pleasure of interviewing Gary Ludgood. Gary is the president of field operations for AT&T, where he leads a team of 62,000 people. He has also created a commercial business operation in a rural, economically depressed community in his home state of Alabama, which provides employment opportunities for the local residents. Thank you so much for taking the time today to talk with me, Gary. Can you share your backstory with us?
Sure. I'm an Alabama native, as you already mentioned, and went to school at the University of Alabama, earned an engineering degree, and straight out of the engineering school, I started with what was then South Central Bell, now one of the AT&T companies. Had a lot of assignments in network and operations, engineering, construction, planning, and the like. I've always enjoyed what I do. I feel like I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world with the best job in the world. And I just, at this point in my career, after 39 years of doing this, I enjoy helping others get an opportunity to share what I've had the great fortune of doing for the last 39 years.
Gotcha. Thank you. And can you share the funny or most interesting story that happened to you since you took on a leadership role?
Well, probably more interesting things is one of the things about what I do is I get a chance to help people in some of their most dire times of need. You know, communication and the ability to communicate is a valuable resource. And during natural disasters in particular, when that is taken away, not only does it affect commercial aspects of what we do, but basically just families in general. I've had an opportunity to work a lot of hurricanes over the course of my career, from Rita and Katrina, which were obviously very devastating in the Southeast, to most recently Harvey, Irma, and Maria in Puerto Rico. And what stands out throughout all of these things are things employees will do to help others. Even when their own families might have needs, they'll put aside or at least care for those needs and then immediately step up to going to work, whether that's reaching out to their neighbors, swimming to central offices to help restore service. It's just so much above and beyond what you would normally expect. And it makes you realize that, you know, you can buy their head and their hands, but they have to donate their hearts. And in these natural disasters, you get to see the heart of our employees. And I just never get enough of seeing it.
All right. Thank you. And now, what do you think makes AT&T stand out?
You know, at the end of the day, it's the people. You can work a long time, you can make a lot of money, you can work on interesting projects, but at the end of the day, all of that's personified through the people. And I just have to tell you, we just got a great group of people. They're smart, they're energetic, they're authentic, and I love that. AT&T is also a place where we value individuals. It's not a perfect place, but it's a great place to work. We're kind of leading the corporate world's journey through this whole notion of diversity and inclusion and moving from tolerance to understanding, which basically means I want to understand what makes you tick. Why are you like you? And that's okay. And bring these different, diverse voices and talents together in a way that makes our business better. And it's very exciting to watch.
Well, now definitely talking about, diversity in the workplace, what has been some of the feedback that you've been receiving from some of the employees, since you have been initiating a diversity program?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that you give employees license to explore. And we work on a lot of things like unconscious bias. We all have our biases. Some are clear and evident. Some are really not so much. Mm-hmm. And so we've actually worked on classes to help us identify it, getting feedback from groups, doing these sessions together, especially with work groups that work together and learning things. We do surveys, we do personality profiles and the like to just help us learn how we operate and more importantly, how that impacts the people who are part of our team. So we've come a long way in kind of this self-identification aspect of it, and the feedback from the employees has been overwhelmingly positive.
All right, that's good. And then, are you working on any new or exciting projects right now?
Well, right now there are two that stand out for me. I'm a big advocate for customers, and I'm a big advocate for employees. So let's start on the one for employees. I mentioned, I've had a long career, and there are a lot of folks like me in the business, and we're working on this project that we call Getting Our Employees Future Ready. And what Future Ready is all about is reskilling our employees so we take their relevant experience and skills from what they've learned in the past and make sure that they're relevant for the future. So we're a business that's moving from hardware to software, a lot more around data analytics. And so what we want our employees to do is to stop thinking about their careers in the context of their job assignments, but think about it in the context of their skills and make sure that they're making the appropriate upgrades. So we've been very fortunate here in a group like mine, where I've got a lot of technicians and administrators. Some of those folks have turned out to be some of our best iOS developers and analysts. And so it's great to see them make that transition. And it's a gargantuan effort, but we're making some really good progress. And it's very rewarding for me to see it, and more importantly, for the employees to experience it. The other one is around customers. And for me, customers is what makes the business work. And we're launching a program that we call CODE. And CODE is just an acronym for care about the customers, own the problems, deliver with confidence, and exceed expectations. And frankly, it's just a simple framework for our employees to understand what's most important. And if there's anything that restricts us from being able to do those four things, then that's a roadblock, and you should be about removing it. And so what we've seen is a great reception to this rally around the customer. I think it's improving our overall customer experience, and I think our employees can resonate with it as well.
Now, what advice would you give to other leaders to help their employees to thrive?
Well, I believe it's effective communication, okay? And when I say effective communications, employees want leaders to inform them, to educate and share, not because it's just about enabling, to know more about the business, but it also enables their trust and credibility. Leaders, on the other hand, they should be using their power to enable the team's overall success. So I call effective communication the heavy lifting of leadership. Leaders grow weary of this ongoing, what probably feels like a drone of communicating the same message over and over, but you can't overdo it. So I tell the story to my team that when I was a little boy, I asked my mother, why does the preacher preach the same sermons over and over? When you're a child, you think like a child, right? But she gave me an answer that stuck with me all my life. She said, one reason is there's always someone in the congregation who's never heard that message. Second reason is there's always someone in the congregation who's heard the message, but they aren't behaving as if they heard the message. And the third reason is there's somebody in the congregation who's heard it more times than you, but they need to be reassured that it's still the right thing to do. So I think Booker T. Washington summed it up well. Booker T. Washington said there are two ways of exerting one's strength. One is pulling up, and the other is pushing down. And for leaders and founders, they should use their strength to pull up all the positive aspects of the organization, but they should also use their strength to push down on anything that restricts it.
All right. Now, is there a person that helped you to become successful, and how grateful are you to this person?
When I saw this question, I thought about a lot of things, but it just has to be my parents. There have been a lot of people who helped me along the way. But I think if I think about it foundationally, it has to be there. So with my mother was the first in the family to get a college degree. She went on to be a teacher, and so education was just a huge factor for her. And it was basically a promise that she made to her parents that all of her children would get college degrees. And so she was successful with that.
Mhm.
So education was number one. But my father, on the other hand, had an eighth grade education. He was in the pipeline construction business, and I grew up digging ditches beside him, mixing mortar and hauling bricks to build rural water systems. So his thing was hard work. So between the education and the hard work, I think those are probably the two foundational things that's been with me all.
Gotcha. And just talking about, your parents and how grateful you are in having them in your life. When we talk about the Black community and we talk about, parents being involved, how important is that for, for parents to be involved, with, their Black, daughters and their Black sons, and encouraging them, to, be successful, to do whatever it is that they want to do. What feedback would you have for that?
Yeah, it's a great question. The truth is that whether it's in the home or in the workplace or anywhere else, people can do way more than they think they can do. And usually what drives them to doing more than they ever believed they could is having someone who says, I trust you. I believe in you. You're capable. I got your back. I got your front. I'm with you all the way. And so just knowing that, even when you don't know it, makes all the difference. And you can always tell. You can always tell with every individual, those who had it and those who didn't. So that would be my perspective.
No, thank you for that. You're definitely right about that. You can always tell.
Mm-hmm.
Tell who has been there for a person and who has not been there, because how they go about their career and how they deal with certain situations, you can definitely.
Absolutely.
So yes,
who they trust, how they trust, if they trust, all those things kind of go back to, how were they nurtured along the way. It's never too late to alter that, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to recognize that along the way, but just having someone who believes in you and encouraging you and can be very honest with you about right and wrong makes a big difference.
How have you used your success to bring goodness to the world?
Well, we're all required to give back. To whom much is given, much is respect. To whom much is given, much is required, much is expected. Right. And so for me, you mentioned at the top of the interview that I've got an investment in an aquaculture farm in rural Alabama. Basically, we raise shrimp in central Alabama using aquaculture methodologies. We actually raise, harvest, and distribute them from saltwater ponds in the middle of Alabama. Very, very interesting, 150 miles from the Gulf of Mexico, raising saltwater shrimp. But it gives us an opportunity to employ people in some of the poorest regions of the state. It gives them an opportunity to work for themselves without having to leave those regions and further deplete the resources there. We're actually trying to get an industry up and running so that we could continue to employ those folks. And while I'm an investor in the business, the dividends that I see are really seeing those folks start to see a brighter future, what they're capable of, and hopefully the other things and other jobs that it might spawn for the region.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. When I read about you, I said that was really a great opportunity to give back to the community. And, for people that are in your position that are able to invest into other companies, in impoverished, communities, it's so important, especially in, Black and brown communities. So, I definitely, tip my hat to you for that, because I wish there were more people like you that were, out there investing and really caring about, these poor communities, and giving them a chance to be able to have some type of, job, some type of career. So I definitely appreciate that. And I thank you for doing that. Definitely.
Well, thank you for saying that. I mean, I'm a native Alabamian. I'm just a simple guy from Mobile, Alabama, who, probably beat the odds if there were any odds out there. But I'm very familiar with the lifestyles that people live in these settings where there isn't a lot of job opportunity, and it makes a difference. And I'm happy to do any small part I can to improve.
Thank you. Thank you. And now, can you share the top 5 lessons you've learned, as a Black man in tech?
So I'm an old man. I mentioned that earlier. So 5, limiting it to 5 is interesting, but I do have a list. So let's move with it. So I think the first thing is this notion of you first extend grace, and I'm going to give you my 5 after that, but I need to explain that to you. And by extending grace, it basically means you should presume the positive. Which doesn't mean that it's always going to be positive. It doesn't mean that always people have great intent, but you always begin with the belief that people are positive and intend the right things. And if it goes a different direction, you don't have any ulterior motives. You always know that it wasn't you, that you can pursue those things. And what I found over the course of my career is that more often than not, people are well-intended. And so you have to make a decision on how are you going to deal with people. Are you going to assume that they're all negative until they're proven positive, or are you going to believe the opposite? And I believe that they're positive. So my first one is really about integrity. And basically, your work should always reflect your character. Whether you're digging ditches or putting a roof on the house or rebuilding Puerto Rico communication infrastructure, whether your boss is there or not, you're supposed to do the right thing. And you should do the right thing because it's right. It should be self-policing. So it's all about your integrity. So for me, integrity is number 1. The second one is no one's an island. So you have to share your successes with your team, especially when you get these gigantic jobs. You mentioned I got large organization here within AT&T, but I don't do the work. And frankly, I couldn't do it. I just marvel at what people are capable of and what they're willing to do. So there's no success for me without someone enabling it. So I think that's the number 2 thing. But you also have to share your failures. It's easy to get a job like mine and people think you got it because you never made a mistake. And if I added up my failures and the cost of my education for AT&T, I don't think I'd like to remind them of how much they paid to educate me to be able to do what I did. I've had some spectacular failures. I've learned from them, but the thing is that failures aren't fatal. And I think that's why people don't tend to share them, because they don't want anything associated with them that didn't look successful. But failures are just something you learn that didn't work. And it's an opportunity to move on and get better. The 4th thing is this notion of taking risk and being bold. And this one, I think, can be particularly challenging in the technology space. But I think it's really the key. I once had a boss, I was sharing something new I wanted to try. And he asked me, would I bet my job on it? And I chuckled and said, I bet my job on all my decisions. So, if you think about it in that context, what difference does it make? If it's not working and you want to try something different, can't be anything against it. You just can't let it paralyze you. So be bold, step out there, be innovative, and encourage others to do the same. And then the last thing is around expectations. You need to be very clear around expectations. It should never be ambiguous what the commander's intent is. So be very clear about your expectations, set out clear objectives, and hold people accountable to making it. And what I found over time is that's one of the bases for things being in disarray. I've had a lot of assignments, but I've never had a job where someone who wasn't already there didn't have the foundation of what it took to fix it. So a big part of working through these 5 items is just making sure you create an environment where those solutions can rise to the top. People can be voiced, so we can put those things into action.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you for that. And what would be your favorite life lesson quote?
Favorite quote, I believe in building bridges and not walls. Like I said earlier, I'm not an island. I don't want to be on an island. No one is, regardless of what they think. People talk a lot about autonomy. Excuse me. No one's an island. People talk a lot about autonomy, and sometimes I think they confuse autonomy with authority. We're not sovereign. We're part of a team. We don't fly an independent flag. And I think it's important that we build bridges to the teams that enable us and have a mutual success.
All right. And lastly, who would you have a private breakfast or lunch with, and why?
I've been really intrigued with Shaquille O'Neal. I was a fan of Shaquille as a professional athlete, but I've been even more impressed with what he's turned himself into as an entertainer, a pitchman, a businessman. And I think he's done a marvelous job of that. And I think it would be just a lot of fun to hang out with Shaq and talk about, what was his motivations and what does he see for himself in the future.
Mm-hmm. All right. And do you have any last words for us?
Well, I just want to thank you for the interview. I would tell you, that Black men in tech probably endure the same challenges as all men in tech. But I think we are somewhat behind the curve at this point in time. And I applaud you for what you're doing to just highlight that we're out there, we're trying to do our thing and really trying to bring some folks in behind us as well. So thank you very much.
Oh, no. Thank you so much, Gary, for taking the time, to do this interview with us. And, is there, any information that you would like to, tell anyone? Is there anything else that you would like to say, or?
Well, all I would tell you is what I said earlier, is that you can do far more than you think you can. I encourage you to be bold, take risks, be innovative, bet on you. If you won't bet on you, why should anyone else? So go for it.
I hear that. Well, Gary, thank you so much for taking the time today. And, you have a great one. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.